everyone. Today I am joined by the multi-award winning co-founders of Voilo, fintech entrepreneurs who are supporting charities and small business, Ronan Hynes and Ravi Ranjan. Welcome, Ronan and Ravi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
It's brilliant, thank you. So for those in the audience who have not heard of Voilo before, could you give me a little introduction about what it is you do?
Absolutely. So we are, as you pretty mentioned, the co-founders of Voilo, and we exist because for too long, so many of our favourite local businesses and charities, they're struggling to survive, and it's not because they don't have amazing value, but simply because they don't have access to that affordable technology in order to compete. So me and Ravi came together with a brilliant team to develop an app that enables them to take payment directly from their phone, which goes straight in their bank account, saves them up to 90% of transaction costs, but most importantly, provides them the tools so they can actually start gaining and retaining customers for their business.
Great, that's a really useful introduction. So let's start right at the very, very, very beginning. Ravi, how did you meet Ronan? Tell me a little bit about how you guys got to know each other.
Oh, that's a very interesting question, because that journey by itself is through the social media platform, is Facebook Marketplace. So I was living with my previous flatmate, and he was moving out with his girlfriend. And I just posted on the Facebook Marketplace that I'm looking for a flatmate. And this is where Ronan was hunting for a new place, and he wanted to move to Birmingham City, because we all know our Birmingham city centre is very much attractive and have lots of things to do, isn't it, Ronan?
Well, I think basically he wasn't asking for a deposit, so that meant that, okay, I'd be interested in joining. So I think at that point, I very much messaged him. Turns out we both worked in the same building together. Ravi was beginning Voilo, which I'm sure we'll get onto, and where that began, I was working very closely at a brilliant business as well. And I think it was at that point where we moved in together that you were really starting to develop the business, and we started to see potential synergies, right?
Absolutely. And if I say, like, for me and for us also, like, the business is one thing, but our core thing was our values, our core values as being as a human. And for me, trust and honesty is the two values which I always keep top of everything. And that's how we connected, and slowly every time, day to day, when we're discussing the business and all, and our skills also very matched to each other, what we want to do in the business.
Okay, so you said about trust being really important there, and the fact that you lived together at the start, I imagine means you formed a very close-knit bond very early on. So how long were you living together before you started realizing that you could go into business together as well?
I think it's about six months or so. I think it was interesting because when I first met Ravi, we went for a walk, and I was expecting him to ask me questions like, I don't know, do I drink alcohol? Do I eat meat? What's the recycling order? And what instead he asked me is, what do I define success as? So it very much let me go that we got to know each other very well on a deep level very quickly. And I think it was over that time, I was over my business, Ravi was developing Voilo, finalised it to launch and everything, that I think started to tempt me over, started to present where we could work. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But I think it was over that time where maybe we weren't necessarily thinking this is business partners, but we were just flatmates. So we got to know each other on that deeper level, that then we could apply that to the business.
And one of the things also, I just want to add here, like, our core value was nothing, like, we wanted to make an impact, like what world we want to leave when we're gonna leave this world. And you're like, this is something we have to do. And this is where Ronan was happy with his job, and he was getting a decent salary. But I will take risk, I will quit the job, and I will join this journey.
Okay, so Rona mentioned a second ago, you went straight in with the big questions. How do you define success? Ravi, are you always going to be an entrepreneur? Was that always on the cards for you? Or how did you see your career forming at the start?
I mean, for me, in terms of, I see like life as something, given an opportunity to make an impact. In terms of work, yes, I work for companies and all, but I see where my happiness is and what I want to do. So when I came to UK in 2019 to do my MBA, and from first day, I want to solve a real problem which we as a community are facing. And that's why after working in this industry for so long, finding the problems of the customers, I would say the businesses, And then like, no, and what are the skills I've learned after starting my career in 2014 somewhere. So like whatever the skills I've learned and the experience that I've gained and doing the MBA, let me give back to the community by doing and building something.
Okay, so in terms of giving back and the charitable aspect of it, did you set out to create a financial product, or how did Voilo start? How did that evolve?
So the journey is like, I started my career as a software developer in 2015. I quit my first job and started my first startup back in India. It was also helping the small businesses where they can connecting with the shoppers and the small vendors. And after exiting that, I worked as a big company, the corporates as a product manager. And when I came to UK to do my MBA, I got a chance to work with Arriva Trains, which are the parent company of Chiltern Railway and London Tube. So where I was building a loyalty program for them to increase the adoptions. And then I did more market research about the UK loyalty market. So linking up my previous startup and then the market data which I got through this project, I saw there's a big gap. I mean, the UK economy, the 50% is based on the small businesses. That's what they call the backbone of economy of the country. But still, they don't have that the enormous tool which they need to thrive. If we see one example of Amazon, they are I mean, tracking all the touch point of the consumer to maximize the business. However, the small business, they have amazing offering. They are seriously making a huge impact in our community, day-to-day life. But that's all like what I can do and we together can do to provide the tool to them where they can thrive.
So at what point, Ronan, did you come in and how did that come about?
Yeah, so I think I was working at my other company and of course living with Ravi, and I've always been quite a nosy person. So no, whether whether it was going to end this way or not, I think I would have tried to be involved in the sense of, because I love to learn, and I think I can always remember one conversation we had where I think it was in the living room or whatever, and we realized that Ravi was talking, I could see how inspiring it was and the impact, and I maybe corrected Ravi on one day. I said, no, it wasn't even corrected Ravi. I just said, like, I think fundamentally there's this misconception that the high street is dead. And that's not the case. It just needs reimagining. It needs reinventing in the sense of what are the needs of consumers now, to where it's not the same as it was maybe in the 80s, where that was where you went shopping. I think what we've started learning from like just towards the end is that it's people like experiences. They like to spend, they see the high street as a chance to be with the community. And I think that's the core that we still have no matter what. And I think it's at that point, I believed completely in that message, that I was tired of seeing the articles and articles saying, small businesses, it's not working, they're dying, and no one's actually doing anything. It's easy to say we want to support local. It's an easy thing to say that you see it across government, across low level, but actually think, how can we make that easier for people to do that? Because there is that desire, but I don't think people always know how. So it's at that point that sort of working, I think Ravi was suggesting maybe doing an evening a week, then it went to half a day, 1 day a week. And it was at this point where Ravi had built a brilliant business plan. Of course, I'd worked alongside him, but very much there. And we had an opportunity. Well, I guess I don't want to put to a head, but where through Tag Network, when we'll get to it, where we went for investment and Ravi asked, Ronan, can you help me with the pitch? I think it's at that point that really we pitched in front of investors, and we can get into this in the sense of, it was at that point that I realized not only was this a brilliant concept and a brilliant message and impact, but actually it had commercialization. And this wasn't just an idea, this was a business. And at that point, I made the switch over, which was a very difficult decision, but I've never looked back since, in the sense of, because let's see what the world is, but what's possible is what we've always seen.
Yeah, and I think you've both rocketed through everything, and yeah, it's incredible to see your journey and trajectory. So in terms of different skill sets, do you have different skill sets, or do you have kind of similar skills? Do you bounce off each other? How does that work?
I think we once did a personality survey, which I wish I could remember how it is, because it was really simple, but there was two questions, but it was essentially working on like what type of person are you, emotion driven, fact driven, and me and Ravi were complete opposites to the exact mark in how we view ourselves. At least it was a very simple personality set. I think in that way, I think it's been our absolute biggest strength, and for me being the biggest strength is where I'd say is my background is, I had a degree in computer science. I was a developer, but I always knew I wasn't destined to be behind a computer. I wanted to sell. I wanted to speak about that, but I had that knowledge of the tech. And I think Ravi has a brilliant business background and so much knowledge on that, but really knew how to develop and build a product that from the tech side. So I think with that, both like going back to what Ravi said earlier, doing what you love, doing what gets you out of bed, what gets you excited. I think we both realized we could do that, but also help each other with our previous experience and knowledge to be that backbone for each other.
Yeah, it really helps to have someone else that is the complete opposite to you sometimes, doesn't it? Because it means you can up level in ways that you just wouldn't be able to do on your own. And I think sort of having a business community and friendships within the business sector is always so important. So in terms of when you started out with Voilo, how did you get the message out there? Were you going out networking quite a lot, or how did that start?
I think in terms of, because for me as being as an international student when I came here, I know it's very much important to put myself out first so that I can able to put the Voilo message outside the community. And that's how, like, the time I graduated, the first thing when I saw there was an opportunity in the tag network to being as a young professional board member, and right away just applied for that. And there was a series of the process, and when I get into that, oh seriously, that was the best thing which I did, because that not only helped us to improve my profile, but also helped me to connect with the right people in the community who can mentor me, direct me, and also show the pathway I have to be. And that's eventually help us to be as a snowball effect. Like one person I connected, they connected with another person and all. That's helps us to build a strong, I would say, the network, especially in the Birmingham and West Midland area, which help us to spread the message and the impact that we're trying to do through Voilo.
Yeah, and I think adding to Ravi's point there, I think it was that perfect opportunity. I think Ravi had unlocked those initial doors, absolutely. And then we started to realize, okay, we were at a stage there where we had backing, and we thought, okay, we need to get the name out there, and really saw that networking as that opportunity. And I remember people used to comment that me and we'd go to an award show or whatever, but we wouldn't sit next to each other because I sit next to him every day at work. I don't want to speak to him, if I'm honest. It was an opportunity to speak to someone else, to learn, to potentially find that partner, that investor, that stakeholder. You don't know who you could meet. And I think one thing that on reflection, I think we did quite well, which maybe at the time we didn't realize, was exactly that, seeing how we can network correctly. And that is really trying to speak to as many people, not trying to sell. And I guess we were in a good place. We didn't have a product at that point. So it was just about meeting people, getting to know the community. And I think, especially here in the West Midlands, we have such a family community that if you can show a good face and you start to make friends very quickly, friends speak to friends, and you can see how quickly that can snowball to really get known, especially in this area.
Amazing. Okay, so you mentioned there that you started off and you didn't have any backing or anything like that. Tell me about how you raised funds as a startup. Tell me the story behind how you got to where you are with that.
So, okay, so I think, to be very realistic, that I'm not sure I have shared this. So the one time there was a tag event in the evening time, and one of our investor, who is also was a board member of tag, he was there. And doing that, I was just having normal conversation with him. Then he asked me, what do you do? I said, this is what I do. I'm trying to develop this business and all. And he was very keen to know more about it. And we had around the entire event, it was only one-to-one conversation for 1 hour. And all the conversation was regarding this. And then he shown the interest to be part of the journey. And next day, he like, okay, I'm in. And he also helped us to put with the another his friends and colleagues who were the other angel investors who invested us. So that's how it was, all through the connections, network, and by pushing ourselves and going out.
And I think that at that point, once we had that connection, we were sort of put in that position, weren't we? Like, okay, are you lads ready? Can you pitch on Friday? And we were just like, yeah, because yes, we could have said no, we're not ready, or we have, but we thought, and we had the business plan, we had everything, we had that initial pitch deck. Could we have practiced more? Probably, yeah, 100%. But why turn away an opportunity? And actually, that whole day, I'll be honest, it was very, very hectic, and we ended up only being able to practice from about 11 p.m. the night before. But I think it was, we knew that in that first early pitching, you are pitching the vision. You're not pitching the specifics. You're not pitching the everything. That's what you're doing. And I think because of that, it just went so well, I think, that first pitch, whereas it didn't matter about getting all the lines right and exactly how we planned it, but it was just have a conversation. This is our vision. This is how we believe we can truly make an impact. And I think it was at that moment when, well, for me, it's like that moment when that investor's eyes up and I went, okay, so how do we make this happen? That I realized this is serious. And then, I'll be honest, there was a point where they asked, so Rona, what's your involvement? Because I thought, are you working for someone? And it was at that point I said, no, I'm leaving my business and I'm full-time at Voido. I made that decision there and then, because if someone's willing to back you, you back them, and you go on that journey together.
This is what happened because of the value. He said the word, now I have to leave the job. So he's like, shit, now I said it, I have to leave the job.
Nothing like piling the pressure on. I love it. Okay, so in terms of your pitching now, has it improved? Are you rehearsing a bit more now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we've now gone through another round of investment since that one as well, and I think each time you really learn a lesson, and you realize what the important parts are. The people think it's just the pitch, and I do love pitching because I love sharing about Voido and that. And that's maybe what opens the door. That's what really gets you your foot in the door. It gets you to open the conversation and interest. But it's actually then when they get down to the business, how confident are you? Do you know what the next 90 days looks like? Do you know what the next 9 months look like? If they ask you a financial question, do you even know it off the top of your head? Or you've got it there in a strong financial deck, in a strong financial point? I think that's the lessons you learn, is that it's having those, but being confident, knowing exactly where you want this business to go and being able to demonstrate that through a variety of ways.
And I do remember, like, the first time when we had to pitch in front of the investor, I was very much into Ronan, let's write a script and all, and we will rehearse it. But Ronan, initially he did, but he was like, no, let me do it my way. And when he do by himself, it's much more a realistic kind of an honest conversation kind of, rather than a representational point of view. So, and that's how it was very good when when Ronan pitched, it's very authentic. It's not like, okay, I remembered all those things. It's very authentic. And when they ask the question, we respond what we know. We also say no if we don't have the answer. That shows the honesty. Okay, we are not aware of that, but we can work around it.
Yeah, I always think when you connect with someone on a human level and are passionate about something, that really comes through, doesn't it? Okay, so what would your top 3 tips be for someone that's looking to go for their first round of investment?
For that first round, I'll kick off. I guess we'll go back and forth in the sense of, for me, is that power of the network. Like, for me, it's why Tag Network exists, and why since day one, since I joined with Ravi, is that you realize if you make the right conversations and you put yourself out there, it might not be, for us, it was very, very lucky in some ways that we found someone at the exact networking. But what I've learned since then, for example, our next round, it's not always who you meet. It actually, a member that I met at Tag Networking invited me to their investment dinner, which is where I met our second investors. And you don't realize it's people know people. And if you've got a value proposition and you go in, that you're just excited. I think people buy that energy where they're like, wow, I want to help out. This sounds like you really make an impact. That at that point, they'll introduce you if you be very clear. So for me, it's making sure you get out there and share the excitement of your business. I think there's an element, you don't want to get into desperation where you're like, I need money, because then people feel a bit, but if you're just there, like, I'm really excited and I'm open to seeing how I can collaborate, all of a sudden, those doors start opening more.
And adding to Ronan's point for me will be ready in all the aspects and all the questions that might be asked from a potential investor. It could be for the product, marketing, finance, as a business plans, legal side. So be ready for that. And I mean, if we Google it, there could be tons of questions, but have those answer ready for that, or not ready, but thought about it. And if you don't have, be honest, just say, I don't have that answer, but I can work around it. But most important is be ready to listen to feedback, because these feedback help us to get to know about what other people think about or might ask if we reach to another investors. Because investors also look for the individual and they think how that person is. Is that person, will I be happy to work with that person when I'm going to suggest something? So that's very much important.
And then I think the final tip that I'd say very much is from experience. And look, this is business where you sometimes learn through success, through mistakes, and striking while the iron's hot is the most important thing. I think that we had our opportunities that maybe we didn't go all the way through because we didn't necessarily get back right away, or we were internally discussing. But one thing someone's told me recently is when someone wants to put money in your business, they're saying they believe in you, they want to put the money. So you get back in minutes, not hours, not days, but minutes. That becomes your top priority, because essentially that person saying they're going to support you financially, they want your dream. That's more important than anything in many ways. And for me, that's the lesson that we really learned. Like, if people are excited, keep them excited, because you'd rather them go through the process and say no in 10 days than go through the process and say no in 2 months because you've been long emails and they've lost energy and actually now they've seen another opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree about that point about momentum. And yeah, I think there's a big difference between people that are naturally entrepreneurial and people that aren't, in that if they see an opportunity, they'll go for it straight away. Whereas you find other people are waiting around for things and it never takes off the ground. So those are all super helpful tips. Thank you so much for sharing those. So coming at it from a slightly different angle, do you ever feel pressure from your investors, or do you feel like there's more weight and responsibility on your heads now? How does that feel?
I mean, I see more as a balanced side, because sometimes is a support that we need, because they have been in the industry for so long. But also sometimes is a pressure because the investors and we have to manage the expectation for what they have put the money. So we have to work around that, because that's not only the money, is the trust. So how to keep that trust factor there? So it's more about balancing the both things, because there is a support, but there will be a little bit of pressure, and balancing is a key, I believe.
Yeah, and I'd say, so it's not necessarily that it comes from the investors themselves, but at the end of the day, at least our philosophy, we go back to that early point, fairness and honesty, is that someone from day one to now, we've had however many investors in different capacities, from friends and family at the start to angels to our next round, whether it's £1 or £100,000 or more, that's someone's money, that's someone's hard-earned money. And fundamentally, the pressure, I think, is that if someone's believed in us and believed on the impact, I want to deliver on that impact. I want to deliver on that. And yes, very honestly, is that balance isn't always perfect. Sometimes I will be like, oh, I need to get this done, and I think it's the end of the world if we don't. But that's natural. That happens in every walk of life, in every situation. But I think that's where I'd say the pressure is. But equally, without pressure, you can't make diamonds. It's like I say, isn't it? Like, as in that helps. That really does help in the sense of growing that. I know, I can't believe I just remembered that on the spot.
Love it. No, I really like that having someone to hold you accountable makes you that much more driven. That's really great to hear. So in terms of your investors, do any of them provide any sort of mentorship for you as well, or business advice, or do they just kind of leave you alone, or how does that work?
I think for us, it was really important on this last round that we brought in people that not only we didn't want what's often called dumb money, in that sense, where it's the money goes in and we'll give back to every 3 months, provide us an update. We didn't want that. What we were looking for was about culture fit, character fit, who can add value. And I think what I will say is absolutely, in our from across the book, from since day one, but as everyone's really focused on that, where can they add value? And it works well in the sense of, well, we're in a board meeting and we say, okay, these are the objectives, who can help achieve these objectives and where. So for example, one of our newer investors, they've got a really brilliant sales and tech background where they've been really helped to implement that larger business vision and how that actually implemented the day-to-day. Looking at that task prioritization, the finance side of it, I think all of a sudden you start to realize a pool of experience, how valuable that is. And not only always that person directly, but the contacts or the connections and the network. So I'd say that's where they've really been of value. And for me, I'd recommend anyone looking to raise, especially at an early stage, it's nearly the most important thing.
True.
Okay, so what has investment allowed you to do with Voilo?
So I think with the investment, it's enabled us to really start to position ourselves, not as a startup, but as a scale-up, and a scale-up that's truly making a difference. I'd say that first investment went towards building that MVP, understanding early product market fit. We tried probably about 50 different sectors when we started because we wanted to see where it worked, where it didn't work. It enabled us to then really start to expand in this charitable space, which of course grew. And now with this new investment, we thought, okay, we've took so much learning, we've gained quite a few awards, recognition, and we've built a name for ourselves. It's now, okay, how can we grow this and turn this into a business? So what it's enabled us to do is that as of in the next month, we'll have released our new consumer app, our new business app, and actually all of a sudden, we start to have this full package of we can truly support an end-to-end solution for both consumers and businesses. At this point, that then allows us to start to expand this nationally, internationally, and without that funding, as much as it'd be nice to think, oh, we don't need it, it would be at such a slow pace that eventually someone would come in and overtake us. So what the funding has allowed us to do is to move at pace and accelerate and really grow the business.
And adding to Ronan's point, if we see like entrepreneurship is by itself is a roller coaster journey and as well as a lonely journey, I would say. But these funds help us to have initial team members who are bought into the vision that we want to do. And the team member act as a family, either the business is doing good or bad. And that's very also important in this initial journey. And this initial, the funding that we have raised that help us to have a very strong the core team that we are looking for.
Okay, and in terms of growing your team, how have you found that? How did you find the hiring process? Was it easy for you to find people as passionate as you, or has it been a journey?
It's an interesting one because I think that the core team that we have, I'll be honest, is what gets me out of bed, is the idea that like someone is going to be so passionate, and sometimes it's getting stressed, or sometimes it's having a call at late at night or something. But actually, it's the fact that we're like, if that does happen, it shows there's the care. I think where we've done it right, we've absolutely smashed it. I couldn't be happier. I think for learning how to do this now as we grow and scale, yes, there has definitely been some learnings. We've trying to work out how can you build motivation and really try to grow that. But I think through that is a little bit of trial and error, and I think it has to be, is my biggest belief, is someone will say this is the solution, but no business is in the same way no solution is going to be the same. And for us, as we've started to expand, I think we've started to learn what are the things we care about, what are the things we focus on, rather than necessarily what we think we're meant to focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have been the biggest challenges for you both as entrepreneurs?
I think the biggest challenge, I feel like, not only for us, for any entrepreneur, is like work-life balance, like how to balance the work and also keeping sure that we are having a time for ourselves, time for our loved ones, family, friends. So managing that is quite challenging, but it's required also, because yes, we want to grow this business massively and we want to put all our energy and time there. However, we also need those people and those time for ourselves so that we don't burn ourselves. So balancing that is quite challenging. and we are still in that journey, and I believe lots of things to learn.
Well, I think mine completely links up with that in a sense. So I think time prioritization in the early stage is so important. It's interesting the point you said earlier, because you're absolutely right. You said like that entrepreneurial mindset sees an opportunity and grabs it rather than waits. But the thing is what can often happen is then you go too far in that direction where you say yes to every opportunity, and then all of a sudden Monday to Thursday my calendar's full, and I'm like, where am I actually meant to do work? Because I've seen all these things, and I think you only have so much energy, and then you go into your work-life balance after work. That energy is how much is left for that part. So I think one thing we're really realizing is that prioritization. What's the goal of the business this week as well? How do we achieve that, rather than, yes, these opportunities will come and you've got to evaluate them, but really being able to say no, I think has been both the biggest challenge, but hopefully the thing we've really now learned to go forward.
Yeah, I think it's such an important lesson to learn, because like you said, it is so easy to say yes to everything, and then you burn out so quickly, don't you? So with your work-life balance, living together, how did that work out? Did you have a work-life balance whilst you were living together, or were you just living and breathing work?
So, no, it's an interesting one. I think it's one where it's interesting because when we first started and we got more serious, I'll be honest, it was something that may have been in the back of my head. I was a little bit worried about, because I knew me and Ravi were so aligned prior to Voilo. So how was that going to change? And actually, what I found is okay, yes, it does take a lot, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's work often, where it's not like all we talk about is work, or all we do this. It's actually like, okay, yes, there might be a 2 a.m. brain inspiration that you go in, and you've got to be open for that, which is a weird, but equally it's going out for dinner and just not talking about work, and not even consciously doing that, but just realizing it's just a part of it. And one thing I'd say Ravi really taught me, and I think it's brilliant, is that like business and personal life are separate. And like, yes, they're going to feed into each other, absolutely. Like, but if something goes wrong in the business, I'm not going to fall out with Ravi and not make him dinner, or vice versa. Like, that's different. That's not how it works. Like, and I think as long as we always remember that, which I'll say to this day, we can disagree on business objectives whenever, but we always know at the core, we both just want what's best for the business, what's best to make the most impact. So as long as you remember that, I think that's what really helps with that work-life balance.
Yeah. So one piece of advice that you wish you'd both had at the start of your career?
If I have to put like in the start of my career, so one thing I was like, the start of the career as a software developer, I was like, whatever I want to code, the code should be totally perfect, or whatever things, it has to be perfect. But I realized in the journey that if I wait for the perfection, I might lose many things. So that's why I like perfection is the enemy of good. So that's why we should not wait to be perfect. If we're good, just go ahead, and we will keep learning and learning as you more evolve or get the feedbacks and all. So there will be learning come in the long term. So that's one advice I wish I could have in the early time of my career.
I think from my side, it's like not limiting yourself to the art of the possible in your own brain. I think that if you position yourself as where you want to be, and you've worked that out, and it doesn't even have to be the thing you do forever. Like I'd say in my last career, I did a similar thing to this eventually, and it isn't where I've ended up, and that's fine. But I said I knew I wanted to be high up. I knew I wanted to be doing X, Y, or Z, and rather than thinking I've just got to do here, if you work for a business, any business owner, leader will love the fact that you're trying to work out how to increase, how to improve, how to work on yourself. If you're a business owner, it allows that anyone, whether it's investors, whether it's ourselves, that in our day-to-day, why are we doing this thing? Is it to build something that's just going to help 50 people, 100 people, or is it to do a wider thing? And if you have that mindset, the actions you make and the results of that might not hit that top level, but it will more likely lead you to that level than I think if you just close yourself off.
Great. Okay. And what's one book, talk, or podcast that's really inspired you?
I mean, for me, which I feel like always say as a life-changing book. There are many books, but one book I really loved it. It's more about how we see the world and how the supernatural, like the subconscious mind work. So the book called The Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hills. So there are lots of similar kind of book with the same concept, but that book was very inspiring for me.
And I think the one that I'll say now is actually a little bit left field in the sense of I've listened to a lot of business podcasts, books, whatever, but actually the one that seems to be really clicking with me at the moment is it's like a sports mindset on where they interview elites. It's called the Christy Scanlon podcast. And essentially, like, it's with people, like, it's nice, he's from Birmingham, he's speaking to people like old Birmingham City managers, Aston Villa, but Brummy. I like that connection, but equally it's great to see, like, when people have been successful in sport, what was that mindset? How did they perform? How did they ensure that consistency? And you start to so quickly realize the parallels. And sometimes it's from seeing it from another perspective that allows you to reimagine your own perspective. And I think for me, that's been really good recently.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that sports personalities have that sort of really driven focus thing, because you don't think about it day to day, but they've got the peak of that, haven't they? Okay, and one person who has really inspired you.
For me, like, one person which I'm seeing their very famous videos also, like one of the video of his Start With Why, Simon Sinek. So all of his videos, podcasts, and the way he look as a leadership and organization is very inspirational for me. And I'm still lots of things to learn from him, but I really like the way he inspired other people to see the work and as well as to be as a leader.
I think it's an interesting one. For me, I don't know if I necessarily always see that, and for me it's always looking at the values when I see people. And I'm going to give the really cheesy answer, but my parents, in the sense of, in some ways, where, like, I learned a lot of skills where I didn't necessarily realize at the time, but, like, knowing that putting food on the table, trying to see what's possible. Like, I think for me, sometimes you can look outwards, but sometimes it's looking at those around you and say, like, I'll be honest, Ravi inspires me. I don't want to be cheesy like that, in the sense of I never would have. With myself, I'm constantly learning things like this. And Ravi, the work ethic or the way you can view things is inspiring, because too often in life, I think we think this is the way because we're told it's this way and we assume it's this way. But having that more open mindset, I don't know. I've gone through a journey, and it's those around me who've shown me that as really inspired me.
So is it an indication of that you would like me to cook that dinner tonight?
Yeah, clearly.
Oh.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Ravi and Ronan, for joining me today. If the viewers would like to learn more about what you're up to and about Voilo, where can they find out more?
Well, you've got the website, our socials. It's Voilo Ltd on socials, or just Voilo on the website. Connect with us on LinkedIn, of course, or always possible as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much.